What if not dating again wasn't about loneliness, but about freedom? What if a man discovered that 7 quiet realizations could transform the way he sees love, happiness, and the life he wants to live? For many men over 45, this is not an idea or a theory. It is the reality they live each day. They are no longer chasing relationships, not because of fear, but because of something deeper, an understanding that slowly reshaped the way they look at themselves. And once you hear the realizations they've uncovered, you may find yourself questioning the very definition of fulfillment and what it truly means to feel at peace with your own life. Let's begin by stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, at why so many men are quietly choosing to live without dating, and why that choice has given them more than they ever expected. Across the country, more and more men in midlife are quietly stepping away from the dating scene. They're not joining apps, they're not seeking out first dates, and they're not chasing the idea of another relationship. Instead, they are choosing a life that many around them struggle to understand. From the outside, it may look like giving up, but from the inside, it feels like clarity, like finally listening to what their own lives have been trying to tell them. This shift is not a sign of failure. It is not resignation. It is a conscious decision made after years of experience. For some men, dating again feels unnecessary, even disruptive, compared to the peace they have finally found. And yet, when family or friends see them alone, questions always arise. Why aren't you seeing anyone? Don't you get lonely? The world often assumes that fulfillment must come through partnership. But what if fulfillment can also come through independence, through the freedom to live without compromise? These men are not bitter or broken. They are not closing themselves off to life. They are choosing something different, the stability of their own company, the ability to shape their days without outside demands, the comfort of living in a way that feels authentic. To understand why these choices matter, we first need to step into the emotional landscape of a man after divorce. Divorce is rarely a single emotion. For many men, it arrives as a storm of contradictions. There is relief, the sense of finally stepping out of tension that may have lasted for years. Alongside that relief, though, comes loss, the emptiness of no longer waking up next to someone, the absence of routines that once defined everyday life. Relief and grief often sit side by side, joined by another weight, guilt. Guilt for the marriage ending, guilt for what it meant for children, or guilt for not being able to make things work despite trying. Unlike women, who often turn to friends, family, or community for emotional support, many men face these feelings in isolation. From a young age, they were taught to hold themselves together, to be the steady ones, to push through without complaint. As a result, when marriage ends, they don't always call a friend to talk late at night. They don't sit in circles sharing their emotions. They go to work. They come home. They keep moving. On the surface, they look composed. Inside, they are navigating a storm without a compass. This silence creates its own challenge. Without spaces to express themselves, men often internalize the experience of divorce. The pain doesn't disappear. It reshapes them quietly, influencing the way they view relationships, trust, and the possibility of starting again. While women might process by speaking openly, men tend to process by withdrawing, reflecting in solitude, or burying themselves in routines that feel safe. But in that solitude, something begins to change. The stillness that once felt heavy slowly becomes a place of clarity. The absence of constant conflict brings an unfamiliar calm, and within that silence, something begins to shift, leading to realizations that quietly redefine their lives. The first realization is that peace feels better than romance. For years, he believed the rush of being in love was the highest form of happiness. But love, when tangled with conflict, expectations, and emotional ups and downs, often left him drained. After divorce, he experienced mornings of quiet, evenings without arguments, and weekends free of tension. At first, the silence felt unusual, almost unsettling, but over time, that silence became soothing. He realized that peace, steady and calm, brought a deeper sense of contentment than the most passionate romance ever had. It wasn't about rejecting love, it was about discovering that peace could be its own form of love. The second realization is that freedom is priceless. In his marriage, decisions were rarely just his own. From vacations to finances to simple daily routines, compromise was constant. Afterward, He noticed the relief of planning his days exactly how he wanted them. He could cook when he felt hungry, or travel on his own schedule, spend money without debate, and rest without guilt. The small freedoms added up to something powerful. Freedom meant he no longer had to adjust himself to fit someone else's expectations. The weight lifted was more valuable than any thrill dating could offer. The third realization is that healing takes time, not replacement. After divorce, many people encouraged him to date quickly, as if another relationship would erase the pain of the last. But he learned that healing doesn't come from filling a gap with someone new. It comes from allowing space, from sitting with the loss, from rebuilding trust in himself first. He began to understand that another person cannot repair what's broken inside. True healing required patience, honesty, and the courage to face loneliness without masking it. In that process, he grew stronger. The fourth realization is that love doesn't always mean partnership. For much of his life, he equated love with having a partner by his side. But after divorce, he discovered different kinds of love for his children and for lifelong friends, for his passions and for himself. Partnership was one form of love, but not the only form. He realized that giving and receiving love didn't have to involve romance. It could be as simple as a phone call with a close friend, a laugh shared with a sibling, or the satisfaction of mastering a new skill. This broadened view of love gave him more fulfillment than the narrow definition he once held. The fifth realization is that age redefines priorities. In his 20s and 30s, attraction and excitement mattered most. By his 40s and 50s, stability, health, and personal peace rose to the top. Dating again often threatened those priorities, bringing uncertainty or stress. He no longer needed the validation of being chosen by someone new. Instead, he valued mornings without drama, the security of financial independence, and the closeness of family. His priorities shifted, and with them, his choices became clearer. He realized that what he once pursued no longer served the man he had become. The sixth realization is that solitude isn't loneliness. At first, living alone felt like a hollow space, but gradually, solitude revealed itself as freedom. He filled his time with books, hobbies, walks, and travel. The absence of a partner didn't mean the absence of meaning. In solitude, he discovered creativity, reflection, and personal growth. He noticed that loneliness comes from disconnection, not from being physically alone, and he felt more connected to himself than he ever had before. Solitude gave him strength instead of fear. The seventh realization is that happiness comes from within. Before, he often looked outward for joy, expecting relationships to make him feel whole. After divorce, he realized that happiness could not be outsourced. It wasn't about who stood next to him, but about how he treated himself. He found joy in simple routines, in learning new skills, in taking care of his health, in appreciating quiet sunsets. Happiness, he discovered, was an internal state, built from self-respect and gratitude. By no longer seeking it outside himself, he stopped chasing and finally began living. These 7 realizations did not arrive all at once. They came slowly, in moments of reflection, in quiet evenings, in the steady rhythm of a life lived differently. He steadied tenderly on the life who will life tenderly, but together they reshaped everything. They turned absence into clarity and silence into strength. But while these realizations bring peace, the outside world doesn't always see it the same way. When a man decides not to date again, the people around him rarely accept it without question. Family members often bring it up gently, believing they're being supportive. A sister might say over dinner, "You should give someone a chance. You don't have to stay alone forever." Adult children may ask with concern, "Don't you miss having someone by your side?" The intention is care, but beneath it lies an assumption that being single means something is missing. Friends approach it differently. Over drinks or casual conversations, they joke, nudging him toward dating apps or blind introductions. "Come on, you need to get back out there," they say, unaware that he's already been out there and knows exactly what it costs. The laughter hides a deeper misunderstanding that choosing solitude must be the same as failing at love. Beyond his personal circle, society carries its own silent judgment. Films and stories often portray the man who lives alone as bitter or incomplete, someone who missed out on happiness. The narrative is that fulfillment only exists in partnership, that independence must be temporary, and that a man without a partner has somehow lost. But for these men, the truth is far simpler and far stronger. They are not running from intimacy. They are not too damaged to try again. They simply know the price of compromising their peace, and they no longer wish to pay it. What looks like solitude to others feels like stability to them. What some see as emptiness, they experience as freedom. And so, instead of defending themselves to the world, they begin embracing a different path, one that puts self-acceptance at the center. At some point, a man learns that life cannot always be lived according to the expectations of others. He stops shaping his days around what people think he should do, and instead begins listening to what feels right for himself. Saying no becomes an act of strength, not defiance. No to unnecessary pressure. No to the subtle guilt behind questions like, "When will you start dating again?" No to the belief that being single means being incomplete. In place of those expectations, he begins to build a life that fits him. Mornings start with exercise, not to impress anyone, but to feel stronger in his own skin. Afternoons may be filled with books or long walks, where thoughts are uninterrupted and time is his own. Some weekends are spent traveling, sometimes far, sometimes just to a nearby town, reminders that the world can still be explored without needing a partner beside him. Other days are dedicated to learning, developing new skills, or revisiting hobbies left behind years ago. This way of living is not cold. It is not a rejection of connection. It is clarity, a kind of maturity that comes only after hard lessons. These men are not detached from the world. They are simply more deliberate about how they engage with it. They choose carefully where their energy goes, and they no longer give it away out of obligation. What emerges is not isolation, but a renewed sense of self, a life defined not by proving worth to others, but by creating peace within. This journey doesn't close the heart, it simply makes it wiser about what it truly needs. Choosing not to date again is not surrender. It is not bitterness. It is not defeat. It is maturity. It is the moment when a man understands that peace matters more than proving something to others. After years of giving, trying, and enduring, he chooses balance over conflict, and clarity over confusion. This decision does not make him less of a man. It makes him more in tune with who he has become. If you are living alone now and have found a sense of calm in that space, do not let anyone make you doubt your choice. Your happiness does not need validation. Your peace does not require permission. Sometimes, strength looks like standing beside someone. Other times, it looks like standing firmly on your own. Both are worthy. Both are real. So as you listen to these stories, reflect on your own path. Have you made similar realizations? Have you chosen solitude over starting again? Share your experience in the comments. Your voice may be the reassurance another man needs to hear. And if this message resonates with you, stay connected. Like this video, subscribe for more conversations about life after divorce, and explore the next topic we'll dive into. Life after divorce at 50, reinvention or release. It may give you perspective, or simply remind you that every ending holds the possibility of a new beginning, shaped on your own terms.